Coming up in this episode.
What are the greatest misconceptions that people have about the Illuminati?
A lot of the information that we have about who they are and what they've done is outdated. Coming into the rise of technology, they understood that their way of doing things would no longer work. And so the emphasis became on training us to carry their ideologies forward. And then also the controlling of our psychology through mass media gave them a lot more control over that. So what they've always been is like an umbrella, where all of those other groups that we know of, Freemasons, name your cult, pick your organization, all of those are running kind of independently, but they are being quietly influenced by people above that umbrella.
You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
Everybody, welcome back to Here for the Truth. I'm Joel Rafidi, got my co-host Yerasimos with me as always. Today, we're seeing the return of Shane Bales after over 200 episodes. We first had him on way back when in 2021, July of 2021 on episode 13. And for those that don't know, it's a very interesting backstory if you do decide to go and listen to that episode. You definitely don't need to by any means. You're getting all of it here as well. But basically, Shane, as far as he claims, and I've got no reason to believe he's lying based on the number of conversations that we've had and what's existing, grew up within Illuminati bloodlines. He grew up within the Illuminati cults. He witnessed certain things in his life, and he has a certain unique perspective as a result of that. And so in this conversation, we're just getting deep on a number of really pertinent topics, which we feel are kind of bubbling at the collective fray right now. And Shane provides his answers. He sheds some clarity on certain topics, and you will receive this conversation as you will. And it is what it is from there, but it's a very, very interesting conversation. There's no doubt about that. So right before we get Shane on, if you do get value from this podcast and this conversation, the number one highest metric thing that you can do for us to really grow is just to hit that follow button, whether it be on Spotify or Apple and wherever you're listening. So moving from just a listener to someone who follows the podcast would really change things a lot for us in terms of growing our audience. And if you feel like taking a step further, leaving a review would be incredible. All that being said, here's Shane. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Here for the Truth podcast. Today we have Shane Bales returning. It's been nearly 4 years since our last conversation. He first joined us on episode 13. We dived into projects, programs, cults. Shane, what's going on, man?
Life just keeps moving on, I'm wonderful. Another day in paradise is what I always like to say because, I don't know, I think life is great. I know a lot of other people don't agree with me these days, but I do. Things are well, man. I'm glad to see you guys are too.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate that, man. Okay, so there's no bio here for us to read for Shane. So let's kind of have a chat about who Shane is. How do we start broaching that conversation for a new audience? Who is Shane Bales in his own words?
Well, I guess I'm known online mostly for being an Illuminati whistleblower. I grew up through what people online tend to call the Illuminati, even though that's never what we called ourselves. The idea is correct, though. A basic umbrella that looks over all the programs, projects, and cults in the world. And I grew up through that system. I ended up getting out, which is obviously a very condensed story of how it all went, but ended up getting out. And then I was writing a blog as a way to communicate some information to some people who also got out of the programs, projects, and cults that I did. That was the Ruiner blog. And unfortunately for me, that got picked up by the broader alternative community and kind of went viral when viral was new to us back in the day. To put that into perspective, I had 13 to 20 listeners or viewers, one morning. And the next morning it was about 100, 200,000 and counting. So blew up really quickly, which changed what I had to do. And kind of from there, was a whistleblower, I suppose, did a bunch of interviews, did my own podcast, got pretty tired of the community, so ran away for a while. Came back and just decided to do my own thing and kind of ignore what other people are doing. I find the community at large very convoluted when it comes to whistleblowers and people like myself, right? So I try to just stay out of it. And that's who I am. I also singer-songwriter, artist in that way. Recently started a kind of comedy podcast. So I'm going to add comedian to my resume. But yeah, I mean, I've gone to university for psychology. I've was also raised within that system. I've had a very messed up life, let's put it that way. So aside from all that Illuminati stuff, even just my regular life as Shane has been a horror movie and a Jerry Springer show kind of combined together. But here I am now, and I just try to share what I've learned over all of that time, and also let people know that there's always a path back from, the worst thing that can ever happen to us. We can make it back from that, and I try to be a living example of that.
Thank you, bro. And what is the worst thing that's ever happened to you?
Oh, Jesus. I don't know. Pick one. I guess other people would scale different things, but I mean, I've all the abuses that you could think of. I've been caged. I've been, the R word. I've been beaten. I've been tortured. I've been through all of that kind of physical stuff. And I think personally, if I were to rate it all, their ideology being buried into my brain at such a young age is really what was the worst of it, because that was the hardest part for me to come back from. Mm-hmm. A lot of it was drilling into me that I was superior, I was special, that everyone else was, useless eaters and things of that nature. And I was above all of that. And when I got out of that, it took a long time to heal that part of my brain that believed them. And so I think that was, in my opinion, the worst thing. But like I said, everyone would have different variations of that. And even though I've said all of that, I've given that list, and people are going to associate most of that with the Illuminati, my regular life included all of those things as well. So, but like I said, there's always a path back if you choose it.
Yeah. What did you find? Oh, if you want to go, you could continue on.
Well, what are the greatest misconceptions that people have about the Illuminati?
Well, a lot of it has to do with their belief of aliens, but that's a whole other side topic. I think that the biggest thing right now is just that a lot of the information that we have about who they are and what they've done is outdated. It's obsolete. They kind of, right around the time I was writing the blog, they were kind of in I call it like a rebranding period. And I started calling them the Umbrella Corporation, because that's a lot more like what they've become. Moving away from a lot of the ritualistic magic and things like that, and putting all of their eggs in the basket of technology. And that meant a kind of a restructuring of the way that they did things. There's a lot to this, so I'm trying to just sum it up. But, certain things that needed to be perpetuated, they taught the public how to do. They brought things like MK Ultra and ran that into the public system, and got us doing all the rituals and all of the worshiping of weird things and all of the stuff that used to hold them together. The public kind of does for them in a lot of cases, which satisfies the more energetic or supernatural end of things, like when people get into entities and that type of topic, or that side of magic. And then also the controlling of our psychology, which is the basis of magic. Through technology, through mass media, just gave them a lot more control over that, right? And a lot more access to us through all of that. So I think that I often say that they are often overestimated and underestimated at the same time, because we like to attribute a lot of things to them that they don't quite do. And so an example that I'll use is they always, make the bar seem like it's way over here when really they're about here. So an example that's clear and present: you'll be in the pod, you're eating the bugs, right? It's not going to be a pod. It's going to be more like a tiny home. It's not going to be bugs. It's going to be more like, some type of nanotechnology that you consume, but it's close enough that as long as we're not here, people aren't really going to get all that upset about it. Mm-hmm. And so biggest misconception would just be that the things that we know that they did are not the things that they continue to do. Most of that, if not all of it, has been streamlined and replaced by technology at this point. And instead of the bloodline families and genetics and all of that stuff being such a big deal, like we've been taught it was for them, now they've moved over to controlling things through AI systems, corporations, and things of that nature.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to ask you, because people always say they. And so is it like, and then of course there's the umbrella term Illuminati, but like those are individual groups or there's different factions. Like, so would you say that like not everyone's on the same page? I mean, the idea of like everyone coming together and sitting around a boardroom and like everyone deciding what happened, like those 12 people deciding, like, is that even real? Or is it just like similar value systems where things are kind of like organically evolving and maybe there's conflict? And, I'm just curious, like from that standpoint, like, what are your thoughts?
Well, if you go back in history, it was a lot easier to do something like you were describing there with like 13 people who would make the decisions for massive amounts of people, because the massive amounts of people were much less than they are today. And we didn't have the ability to communicate with each other. A bunch of things have changed over time. And, coming into the rise of technology, they understood that their way of doing things would no longer work. They wouldn't have privacy like they used to. And so the emphasis became on training us to carry their ideologies forward. And so that's what I mean by they taught us how to behave in such a way that we carry forward what they wanted to accomplish kind of for them. And then it's from there, it's just kind of easy steering. But again, like, who are they? One of the things that I've said is if you make it high enough in the Illuminati, no one's ever going to remember your name. That you will be pretty much just erased from the structure. The people that they groom to be at the top of that pyramid are never famous along the way. And that's kind of how they keep that part of it out of the public eye. And then all of these other groups, which you mentioned, can then kind of run their own programs, all believe in what they're doing enough that it seems like there's conflict there. And however, the end results always end up being the same because they've been kind of controlled oppositionally against each other in that sense. And so, yeah, it's a lot of moving parts, and it's really hard to track down a they these days because it used to be the bloodlines. And by the time they told us about the bloodlines and that kind of research was commonly being shared, those bloodlines were so convoluted that they didn't really matter anymore. And so now it's a little bit more people that, I wouldn't be able to point to in any type of way that would make sense to anyone, but people who were kind of bred, grown up, groomed through their system, similar to where they were leading me towards, who eventually, even though we never really knew them as big players in the world, are still influencing bigger players in the world. And then another part of what they had set up, which we're starting to see right now with the alternative media becoming the mainstream media, you'll have a big company that does something massive, like maybe they do some type of CRISPR technology. They play with genetics, they clone things, and they bring them back to life, as an example. And then you've got this guy who speaks for them, who, has all of these credentials. He came up through their system, but it's almost kind of like he's not the guy running the company in terms of the science behind it. He's really just running it as a corporation that is taking care of the science. And so that's where the umbrella corp comes in. And so what they've always been is like an umbrella, where all of those other groups that we know of, Freemasons, name your cult, pick your organization, all of those are running kind of independently, but they are being quietly influenced by people above that umbrella.
Mm-hmm. Are you referring to like the direwolf coming back?
Whether they're being picking on it too much. That was an example, right? Is the gentleman who was on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about that. He's running that corporation. He's not actually the scientist behind it, but he's the one being the front face for it.
Yeah.
Right?
What are the primary objectives of the Illuminati today?
Well, contrary to popular belief, they really want to grow our population, but they also still have their basic globalist agenda of trying to rebuild nature in the process and reducing the way that we've polluted the world, I guess, and ourselves as well. And so this is where a lot of different conspiracy theories start to tie in together, such as, Agenda 2030 and things like that, 15-minute cities, basically just trying to limit our transportation or our travel, right? Limit our travel, limit how many resources we consume, limit our exposure to things in such a way that creates more of nature, more nature spaces, more free growing nature to, rebuild itself in the process. So that's kind of where this is all leading. And it's been that way for a long time. I wrote about that in the blog as well. And ever since then, we've just kind of seen the building blocks come into place. But the unfortunate reality is, while a lot of these changes come in, they're going to seem very positive. To be honest, they're going to be very positive in and of themselves for us. And so as it's all coming together, it's going to seem like a lot of positive change. In my opinion, it is a lot of positive change. However, it's one of those massive positive changes that also kind of has a new system of control built into it, that if we're not kind of aware of, we might fall just as much into that trap as we did the previous systems we always have.
So it's like, great, we could grow nature, and yet let's cram everyone into a 15-minute city. So like, we're helping nature, but then there is some sort of potential enslavement because you're living in an environment that maybe isn't the most ideal, even though nature is blooming all around you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and also the technologies to solve all the problems that get created along the way, such as, there's this big rise in like bioacoustic medical technology that's coming forward. And we see them use acoustic systems like that in, say, like malls to deter teenagers from hanging out in them, as an example. But just turn that frequency kind of the opposite direction, where it's making people feel good, or it's making people feel a little bit euphoric or blissful. And adding that type of sauce to the mix of it all is going to be what makes it feel a lot less like a prison and a lot more like a utopia.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So what is the through line that you recommend for individuals today when it comes to like having a basic understanding of these ideas, these concepts, and also like living their lives with less fear, etc.? Like, what is the balanced point in your view that you would recommend to individuals when it comes to like understanding the nature of conspiracy and living your fucking life not in fear?
It really helps if you just start where you're always supposed to start, which is with yourself, right? And the more you kind of understand your own whole self, the more you're going to be able to see how other things work together as well, right? If you see the way in one thing, you kind of start to see it broadly, and that's the best way to start. But then beyond that, it's always just good to take in a lot of information without trying to believe any of it, if that makes sense. Like, not trying to become married to any of the ideas, or really allowing them to emotionally drive you in any sort of way. And because if you do have enough kind of scattered bits on the paper, you'll get an overview of it that is a lot less scary. You'll see that it all comes down to playing us. And so if we just don't allow ourselves to be played, then we should be okay, right? That it is kind of that simple.
Mm-hmm.
That if we're doing the work for them, we can just simply stop doing the work for them and start doing the work for ourselves. And so like, I teach a magic class, and the basis of that is just to kind of look at the tools that they're using and repurpose them so that we're using them for ourselves instead of using them for, some power outside of ourselves, whether that is the Illuminati or whatever deity you follow. Either way, like, the tools are the tools, and we can use them for ourselves. So understanding how and why it has all worked is where you build the immunity to it, because you can just repurpose that how and why to keep yourself free from it. And then if you're trying to understand all of it, look for proof in the result. Like, there's a lot of theories, there's a lot of conflicting information, but the way things have played out is where you can see where the truth of it all is. And a lot of the stuff that's not, it's attached to what I call the big sexy story, which is the part of us that wants to believe in, something really fantastical involved with it all, as opposed to human nature being played and nurtured in the wrong directions, which in most cases is what we've experienced, is a lot of people who understand us better than we know ourselves, making the rules so that we believe we are something that we are not. So reverse engineering everything you learn is kind of what I recommend to people. Is if you're going to learn about the Illuminati, don't learn about it in a sense that it's like, this is your enemy. Learn about it in a sense that that's a system. And understanding how that system works, even if it's theoretical, will help you understand the systems that work within yourself. And then if anyone tries to play any of those systems, you will be able to avoid that. Hopefully that's the question you were asking.
Sure. No, definitely. Thank you. What was the significance of Pope Francis and Klaus Schwab resigning from Easter Monday. Well, Pope Francis is dying and Klaus Schwab resigning on Easter.
Give us the inside scoop, Shane.
I don't think that there is one, to be honest. Like, so much stuff that they've done over the last 4 or 5 years has been so much as kind of trolling the community that I almost feel like that was another one. Like, you really want to mess with people? Let's do this. But yeah, I mean, ritualistic dates are important to them, and their reasons for having them be important are a lot of where, and this is another thing I wrote about, a lot of how the Illuminati was based on them believing lies as well, right? Like, they were always chasing something that wasn't real. They had their own set of lies that they believed enough to perpetuate that system. And I think in a lot of cases, a lot of these people are still holding on to those types of lies, significance of such dates, things of that nature. And so that could be the only thing, but I don't think there's any real true, conspiracy behind it other than the ritual or the ceremony of it.
So are you saying, because I was reading online, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the founding of Rome was the same date as the Pope's passing? So would that be something where maybe he didn't even die on that day, but it's like, well, let's announce it on that day, and then everyone can just like freak out and think there's some extra significance of it? And I mean, it makes sense on one level that, like, especially now in the age of the internet and our 24/7 news cycle, where whoever has more so-called power in the world, they can see and observe all these different conversations happening, and all these different groups and people talking about certain conspiracies. And like, if I was one of them, I would totally fuck with people. I would just totally like put out things, or like, just so everyone could jump on it in the next 4 days on Instagram. People are losing their shit, creating reels. Like, I don't know. It seems like a fun thing to do for the quote unquote useless eaters to do to them.
We've given them so many examples, especially recently, of like, something happens, we get a couple blurry videos or something, and then the conspiracy hot take machine starts, and the next thing you know, we have this big story created out of whatever that event was before we have any information about it, right? And what ends up happening is everyone hears that big story, they believe that big story, and as the actual information starts coming out, they disbelieve the actual information because it doesn't match that big story. And knowing that we will kind of naturally do that is something that they were well aware of long before the internet was actually unleashed on people. They knew what we would do because we were already doing it in conspiracy conferences long before the internet ever came along, where you would have someone attend a bunch of conferences, put together a bunch of stories, and then come out as a new whistleblower, as an example, making up stories based on these other stories they had heard, which then creates a lore and a mythos behind everything. And that's an example of the big story. And so once the internet came along, and that could happen a lot quicker, right? Now we just do it to ourselves. And because we have such a short memory, we don't really go back and check on things to see if we were actually right about them either. We just carry on with the belief that we were.
Yeah. And it's so obvious that it's happening on all sides of the spectrum. So it's like, whether you believe more of the mainstream narrative and then more alternative information comes in down the road that may be more accurate, you're like, no, this doesn't go with what I heard in March of 2020, let's just say, and the same thing's happening on the flip side. So it's interesting to watch the same dynamic occur. And it always comes back to, again, the things that Joel and I talk about, and I know you talk about as well. And it's one of our missions here for the truth, is this idea of self-knowledge, building regulation in your nervous system, waiting. Like, can people just fucking wait? Like, is it that hard to just like chill, like go hang out under a tree for a little bit? Like, just because you saw an Instagram post, like, you don't have to just then share it immediately and share it to all your friends, and just wait a little bit. It's like such an interesting thing with humans. And by the way, don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm like this like Zen master that like hasn't shared something or believes something right away. But like in my own personal evolution, it's definitely, I've been building more capacity to just like, like, I don't know. There's so much mystery. Like, I'm just going to chill. I don't know what's really happening. I don't need to like have a podcast episode about it a day later.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big part of it. Like I said, that's something that they anticipated us doing. And so when you said, and I've been saying it, I've been putting it out a lot, like they kind of troll us in the way that they kind of let things like that and I mean, those people are still controlling the algorithms, right? Like the YouTube companies and the X companies and the Facebook companies, they still all have control over who sees what and how much of it. So, if we create a big story for them, that's what I mean by we're doing the work for them. And the short memory, the 24-hour news cycle, the TikTok brain, all of that is just working so strongly against us. And, with my upbringing, that's what a lot of the emphasis was on, was all of this coming and what the results of it would be. And so one of the things I had actually written into the blog was what we just saw over the last year finally happening, or everyone admitting it finally happening, is that the alternative media became the mainstream media. But the alternative media is taking all of the same tactics as the mainstream media. So it's not really a difference. It's just a different set of faces.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not even seeing quote unquote mainstream media in the traditional sense anymore at all. Like I'm only seeing alternative media, which probably means that it is now the mainstream.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the occasional MSNBC clip or Fox News clip or CNN. I mean, I feel like CNN is just completely dead. Like, I don't, yeah.
It's like an ongoing joke. They write jokes about themselves at this point, right? And that's what I meant when I said it back then, is that was what was coming, right? And obviously alternative media back when I said it meant different things to different people. Because for some people it's David Icke, and for some people it's Joe Rogan, right? And but really it's everything in between. And that is what has happened, is wherever you are on that spectrum of the alternative media, that is now your mainstream. And you won't listen to anything outside of it. Just like other people may not have listened to alternative media when the mainstream was the mainstream. So that's what I mean. It just flipped sides. And that was, we are the media is a phrase that kind of indicates what their plans were all along, was to give us the power to perpetuate all of this nonsense for them. And go ahead.
But is it all nonsense? Like, are the things that we're perpetuating only nonsense? Like, has it not exposed anything real or led to any progress?
I'm talking more about the way that when I say nonsense, I'm talking more about the behavior than the actual information. But
Gotcha.
But yes, you're correct in that, like, there's truth in all of it, which is why I was referring to the behavior as nonsense, is because there is truth in all of it. And what I was warning in podcasts would happen was that eventually, and I had a bunch of podcasts from 2018 taken down because I was talking about this happening, that what happened in 2020 would happen, something like that, and, COVID as it is. And that would bring a bunch of new people into the alternative media, because people have a very natural human response to being lied to, which would bring them over to our side. And if our side is a real big mess, then they're going to come in and they're just going to make all of those messes a lot bigger. And that is exactly how it played out. And no correcting course along the way, just made it so that once the alternative media did become the mainstream media, it was almost worse in a lot of senses, because, people can just come on here and make things up and it will be believed. And then other people who are trying to actually get to the truth of subjects are often outshined by a group of people who are just making up big, sexy stories. So,
yeah, Shane, I don't know if we talked about this on the first time a few years ago when we interviewed you, but let's take a guy like David Icke. Okay, I want to hear your personal opinion of him. Someone for decades has been going on and on about a whole bunch of subjects that has quote unquote woken up a lot of people in certain arenas. I remember seeing a video of him from probably maybe the early 2010s predicting what pretty much happened in 2020, or that was going to happen. And so, like, the term controlled opposition gets thrown around a lot with him. There's some people that think he's part of the cult. Like, what is your personal opinion of someone like him?
Well, that's their new way of doing things, is just finding someone who's going to do the work for them anyways, and making sure that they get supported, making sure that they get propped up, whether that's by putting them in the algorithm or whether that's by paying them in ways that they don't know you're the one paying them, things like that. Just making sure that they do get elevated bigger. Doesn't necessarily mean someone's in David's ear or that David's just flat out lying. However, that's the way that this has been working for a long time. Alex Jones, David Icke, Joe Rogan would all kind of fall under that same category, is you don't really need to control the man, because the man's just going to do what the man does. But if you can control what's going on around the man in terms of, making sure that that platform that he's doing that from is stable, then you win at the end of the day.
So would you say with David, because he's been censored and like isn't allowed to travel, like that would be part of it to make it seem like, oh, this guy and everything he's saying, no one wants to, we can't let anyone hear it. So then it draws more people to everything he's saying. But wouldn't that like backfire if he is sharing things that are truthful? Like I'm so curious where that dance is.
Well, and that's where, and my blog's an example. If you were to take out everything that didn't have to do with something that couldn't be proven and just leave what could, it would be like almost like official disclosure. But because it's got all this other stuff in it that would require a lot of suspension of disbelief to even consider, then it's buried in there. David Icke's work is exactly the same, because eventually, and this is what the standard critique of him is, I was listening to a lot of what he said, but then reptilian shapeshifters, right? Yeah. And so having that in it, or Alex Jones, another example, he can say as much truth as he wants, but because he's such an over-the-top character, a lot of people are just going to throw it out anyways, right? And that's how this has all been working, and it's always been that way, except for the line between fiction and reality used to be a lot more defined in that sense, because we had books giving it, instead of people on video acting out characters, more or less, in order to deliver these stories. And I know, because I'm one of them, that this is not difficult to do, right? And it's people want it in a certain sense. And, it would have been, I'm kind of, a lot of your audience might not know all of the backstory that I had with like David Wilcock and Corey Good and how that all played out. But like, there's a business there, and there's a recruitment for that business, and you are incentivized to blow up the story and make it bigger and include other things other people are saying in order to be more and more and more entertaining. And those people are the ones who tend to get the spotlight. And it's a great way of, controlling it, but also allowing us to do it to ourselves at the same time. And yeah.
Now a short break from the episode.
All right, everyone, if you're enjoying this conversation, we do have our conspiracy thread in Friends of the Truth. It's one thread out of like 30 threads where we engage in conversations on a whole host of topics. We also have 5 calls a month, 2 community calls. We have a German New Medicine study group. Then we have another call that gets into like tarot and astrology and human design. So we'd love to have you on board and join us. So you can go to www.herefforthetruth.com/FOTT and come along for the ride.
Back to the episode.
I mean, the way that I have come to see things as, I guess, in my own perspective, my psychology has matured as I view conspiracy and observe the world around me. It seems more and more that the fundamental dichotomy is between those who believe in the virtues of the West, being freedom, independence, individuality, the right to one's own mind, the right to one's own property, the fruit of one's efforts, and an obvious systematic subversion of those ideals to turn Westerners into aligning more with values of socialism, communism, without it being so overtly the case. And so, like, it seems to me that conspiracy always hinges upon this dichotomy. Are we moving towards more freedom, more virtue, more love of self, more independence, more community built upon, genuine trade, as opposed to altruism, et cetera, et cetera. And so what is your perspective on that? Because this seems to be coming more and more into the fray, especially today. People talk about the woke right even, which is something that's quite hard to define. But when I look at the woke right in the way that I guess I perceive it, it definitely seems to be a group of individuals who are inherently against the true American values or foundational American values, even though I don't think they would think that themselves. So how does this kind of fit into the picture?
That's what you just described as the name of my comedy podcast, Fear and Hopium, right? You either have fear on one side, we're doomed, we can't do anything about it, they've got so much control, or we're winning on the other side, basically, to sum it up easily. And having that is necessary because people without hope, won't do anything. And that's when they really will kind of maybe fight back. So you have to keep that hopium there, but also keep just enough fear that they won't actually do anything. It's like they're being pulled between the two. And we called those stand down programs, was just to create that dichotomy so strongly that people don't actually move. They kind of just get stuck between the two. And the conspiracy world the alternative media now is completely built on that. It's like I said, it's either we're doomed or we're winning, and there is no kind of in between. And that's the manufacturing or the controlled aspect of it, is to make sure that is what perpetuates through it all. And that's why, because, fear and hopium are drugs that keep us staying still.
Okay. So on that note, then, would you consider like Trump and Musk to be friendly assets or allies? Or give me your perspective on how, they fit into the picture? Because again, like from the outset, it would very much seem as though 2020 came across and we were heading towards complete mandated dystopia. It's hard to even wrap around how Biden's term fits into this grander conspiracy and grander picture. But give me your take anyway.
Well, I mean, even before I was officially a whistleblower, when I would talk to researchers, so one of the questions I got asked in like 2014 was, well, if you were one of them, what's one thing that they're about to do that's going to change everything? And I said, they're going to make Donald Trump president.
You said that in 2014.
Yeah.
Show me the clip. Send it to me.
They're going to make it was private conversation.
Oh,
right?
gotcha.
It's like it was even early in the blog in the comments section before he became president, where I said that that's going to be it. And the only thing I've really gotten wrong is the fact that I didn't think they were going to do another election like this most recent one. I really didn't think they were going to do it. I wasn't in the camp that I thought they were going to do these mass arrests or anything. I thought they were going to come up with another excuse to avoid an election at all. And then when I realized that wasn't going to be true, I was like, okay, they're definitely going to put Donald Trump back in then, right? And so that is an example of the fear and hopium. That's almost what kind of inspires it. And I use him as a character all the time because for some people, he represents fear, absolute fear. I mean, I'm in Canada. We have our election today. My Facebook is flooded with people who are voting for the Liberal Party because they're scared of Donald Trump. It's ridiculous, but that's the fear, right? And on the other side, it's the hopium of he's going to come in and he's going to he's going to do everything that we asked, and he's not going to do anything wrong in the process. He's going to be that perfect president. There's no nuance to that view. And that's why it is going the way that it is. A lot of the same systems that were set to come in place are still going into place. It's just really, we're not really focusing on them as much because he is doing things that look positive. But like I said earlier, a lot of these changes are going to be positive. They are going to change our health in a way that is more better than the current system. I apologize for the sirens if you guys can hear those.
Oh shit! They know he's on Here for the Truth.
There's going to be less pollutions in our food, or we're going to have access to healthier food. We're going to have access to new pathways to medicine that are going to be better, new pathways to technology that are going to be better. Safer environments come with all of that because of the new level of control that they'll have with AI and all the new surveillance systems that they have in place now. So, that's what I meant by a lot of these changes are going to seem better, which presents itself as the hopium that things are getting better, right? But if you really objectively look at what the plan was and where they wanted to get, this is almost just a way to get there with less of a fight. It's kind of what it is at the end of the day, because the people who own the systems that run that technology that was going to create the 15-minute cities and all of that stuff are the people who are behind the current administration in the US, right? So, yeah, and so I don't really have a.
So are you saying that like full wokeism dystopia was never the goal?
No, never. It's like I said, you set the bar over here, and as long as we never get there, then everyone's going to be cool. But if we stop here, which is what we're on the path to do, then everyone's going to be cool with it.
So Shane, do you have hope though? Like, what's your view? I mean, besides just kind of like living your life and creating the best life possible, like, do you think there's hope for humanity in the long haul?
Oh yeah.
Or,
I have a lot of hope for humanity. In fact, I think that this whole process is necessary for humanity. I have a very long view of like human history.
Wow, bro, that was very Stalin-esque. I think this process is necessary for humanity.
What I mean is very, very much like if you get an infection, it's to like, the pus that's coming out is cleaning you out, right? Like that's kind of what's going on here. The analogy I typically use is it's like a childbirth, and we need the baby, but there's a bunch of other stuff that can kind of be disposed of along the way, right? And yeah. And
keep going.
My hope for humanity is that we are inherently good, and that will always shine through all of this. And what the technology is going to do is remind us of, our own technology, our own magic, if you will. But I think it's going to be a process to get to that point that a lot of people, especially us, might not enjoy all that much.
Yeah. I could just picture the 15-minute cities with the sound acoustic technology and the loudspeakers going off. This is for your own good. Humanity shall evolve from this.
Or like people love the reptilian motif, right? If you saw the second version of V, where like, the queen reptile would go in this machine and that would produce bliss for all of the other reptiles that made them do what she wanted, right?
Wait, what is this? Second version of what?
The TV show V.
Oh, gotcha.
The letter V. It's about reptilians who cover themselves with human skins who come to Earth and infiltrate the planet. It's David Icke's story, but they redid it in about 2009, I think that was. And that in that version, that's what they showed, is the way she controls the other reptilians isn't through fear. It's through giving them bliss. It's through making them feel good and wonderful. Because if you feel good and wonderful, you're not going to fight back. I mean, what has caused the biggest part of this most recent wake up? Our health and the ways that we're being poisoned and all of that. If that wasn't there and we couldn't clearly point to that, then would we have had that opportunity to wake people up as well as we did? Probably not, but we did. And so if we don't anymore, then, everyone just feels kind of good living in their 15-minute cities. They're not going to question why they're there. And then the other part of the hope is that I don't believe that they're ever going to like round us up and force us into them. I don't see that in our future. I don't think that they need to do that. I think they're going to be inviting enough, especially to, current or maybe future generations, if they're not raised correctly. Joel, I've got hope for you, buddy, that we can raise children to maybe not choose that. But I think that the current trajectory of a lot of humans is that they are going to choose to go with them.
Well, it makes sense. It seems to be like the people that be totally signing up for it, especially if a lot of things are like kind of good and easier and more convenient. Like, look at the state of the masses, they're like, cool, sign me up.
And the problem is like people can like start fearing ease and good and convenience. And this ties into the West hatred that I'm speaking into. Is like, really, this is the best time we've ever lived in. As much as you want to disparage things that are happening today, no, you wouldn't have rather lived in the 1700s. No, you wouldn't have rather lived BC, etc., etc. So
unless you were a king, that would have been pretty cool, probably.
Probably. But it's like,
it reminds me of another thing that we really need to do, which is train ourselves to see good in things again. Especially with those of us who've gone through the conspiracy network. Like
that's what I mean, because I hate seeing people conflate genuine human progress, innovation, growth, genius with conspiracy.
Yeah. I was like, going back to the direwolf thing, it's the same type of thing. Like, that is cool as fuck. But sorry for my language, guys. But like, I mean, what happened online? People were immediately in attack mode, going on about how awful this is, and you're going to destroy the world and all of that.
I want a pet direwolf.
Right. And like,
I watched, was it Game of Thrones? Like, come on. They were pretty cool.
There is a place for this technology in our lives, guys. Like, there is. It doesn't have to be this dystopian control system that everyone's imagining. There are going to be a series of choices that we get to make along the way that determine whether or not that's what it is for us as individuals. So it's almost like, you could go move to that 15-minute city. You could have everything looked after for you. You can have that bliss. You can have all of those things. or you can go over here and you can make your own life, right? And we're always going to have that option. That's where I think people often get things wrong as well. And like I said, mentioned just a minute ago, this idea that they're just going to start rounding us up and forcing us into these is not within their plans. Just like depopulation was never within their plans. And a lot of this new technology is going to lead to pathways that will be healthier for us. Where the gray area comes in is what we choose to do once that all happens. And that's where, it's going to be a wait and see.
So let me ask you this. So if the depopulation is not in their plans, is like when Bill Gates or Prince Philip or any WEF person, not any, but you know what I mean,
Thunberg
does this type of thing, like, are they trolling? Like, are they just kind of like lying? Like, what are your thoughts?
I mean, we think of depopulation as meaning like they just want to kill us all off, but would have been more accurate if they said repopulation. They want to have, not only more of us, but like certain types of us, if that makes sense. The people who are going to be a little bit more prone to follow the technology into the 15-minute cities and things like that. But, it's a bigger subject, might go almost off topic, but a lot of what's going on with the health of our planet also has to do with the transition that the planet's going through as well, with the electromagnetic changes that are going on the planet. And that's something that they predicted and kind of planned all of this to run alongside for a variety of reasons. But it's a transitional period. We see some bad things happening now, which make it look like they were being truthful when they said that. But once all of the new technology to deal with these problems starts coming in, that's when the population boom can start over again, or start, I guess is the right way to say. So yeah, not to say that they are lying exactly, but it's more of setting the bar here and making us think that it's going to be this absolute depopulation. We're going to go down to what was the Georgia Guidestone's number, like 500 million or something like that.
Yeah.
We're going to go way down there. So if it never actually does that, what we're seeing is almost like a standstill as opposed to a reduction, which if we weren't anticipating a depopulation, we would see what was going on with this standstill as a potential for depopulation. But because they're not just killing us off and we're actually just choosing not to have children instead, which is creating this problem, then we're not noticing it. So that's an example. And even if you take like the whole statement of what he said when he used that sentence, he was talking about controlling it more than actually abolishing it.
Yeah. What do you think the actual population of Earth is? Because I feel like I'm so curious. Like, is it 8 billion, or when they said it was 6 billion? I'm just so curious, like how accurate all these numbers are. Not that I'm saying I'm just
I don't know. I don't think that they're all that accurate, to be honest, especially country to country. But yeah.
Like, this is what I don't understand. It's like back to Trump. Okay, like the EU is like obviously fucking in a calamity right now, trying to figure out how to deal with Trump, deal with Trump's direction. For so long, there's just been this collectivist thing going on. This bureaucracy, there's money handouts. Everyone just living their life at the expense of kind of everyone else. Now all of a sudden there seems to be some kind of stronghold in America that has a key direction. Like I find it difficult to wrap my mind around how this is all part of some grander conspiracy and grander plan. It's like it's odd because, and it also seems as though key figures in the international global politics would genuinely had hope that it wouldn't be a Trump presidency, that things wouldn't be going this way. Now we can say, sure, some people just aren't in on it, not everyone's privy to it, etc., etc. But I can't align 100% at this point in time that this is all just a planned thing, because there's so many real visceral reactions that are taking place where it's like, this wasn't expected as well, or this wasn't wanted, at least.
Well, or that reaction was expected and was wanted, just not by them, right? And like I expected more of what we're seeing right now the first time he was elected, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
That's why my mind started to change when he didn't get reelected for the second term and they put Biden in. And that was why I figured, okay, so they've just changed directions. They're just going to go straight dystopian with this, like the straight woke with it and get it to go that way. But I think what happened was that, the people were just rejecting it so strongly that they had to take another path. In the blog, or even prior to writing the blog, I've been talking a long time about basically they don't want to destroy the United States. They just want to knock them down a couple notches so that they're more on an even playing field with everybody else. And with the way that things are positioned right now, they have that option as an outcome of this, because the United States is going to be forced to, they're basically isolating themselves if it continues on the way it was. Worst case scenario, that means the United States is going to have to go through a rebuilding process where they start just focusing on America first. I think that's a great idea, right? I think all of that's a great idea. And I think all the outcomes of that will probably be great as well. But that does achieve the plan of bringing them down that kind of couple notches to level them out with everybody else, because they're not going to be out there building military bases all over the world and doing what they have been doing. And then Trump gets out of office and all of that work is already done. And from there, we could see the proof in the result. So the plan behind it, and again, I don't see this as a negative conspiracy the same way other people are, but that part of things going this way has been part of the plan. I think it was just a readjustment because it didn't happen as potently as it was supposed to in 2016.
Dude, part of America First is to make us countrymen, because Canada's gonna be the 51st state, dude. Okay, so just
allegedly, yeah, right. Again,
but this is the thing. Like, it didn't happen that way in 2016 because from the outset, it looks like Trump was finding his feet. He had a number of bad actors all around him, which didn't really let him do what he wanted to do. So it's like, how much control is actually there, and how into this, it's like, and this time around, it definitely seems as though he's learned, he's grown as any human would, and he's kind of made decisions, even just within the cabinet, that has a lot less neocons, bad actors, etc., etc. It's just trying to put these pieces together where I'm witnessing like organic things, organic shifts, organic human knowledge growth, etc., with also, there's a plan, is difficult for me.
Well, I think the easiest way for me to describe it would probably be to focus on RFK.
Okay.
As like I was mentioning, they have a lot of plans in the pipe for changing the way that we deal with medicine and healthcare. A lot of them. And it's all based on a totally new pathways of technology that are just kind of surfacing into the public now. But it's a complete change. Like, it's so divergent that you can't just grandfather the system in. So what they needed was someone to come in and level that, like basically dismantle the healthcare system as it was, turn the public against the healthcare system as it is, so that when they tore it all apart and put something else in its place, we would see that as a good thing instead of fighting against the change, right? And that's not to say that that new thing is bad. That's not what I mean. But the way to get them to a place where we accept that drastic of did require them to turn us against the healthcare system too. And RFK's role in all of this has done exactly that.
So you think at some point in the future, part of the plan is that the house of cards around vaccinology is going to crumble? Do you think at some point everyone that for decades has been calling, let's say, people like us the worst of names, that has been believing the lies being spread by the mainstream media, is going to come to that place where they have to go, whoa, I was wrong. We were wrong. Now the mainstream is talking differently. Well, the alternative mainstream, whatever you want to call it, is talking differently about the sacred cow of allopathy. And then that's going to be part of this like metamorphosis that occurs in, let's say, 5 years, 10 years, whatever.
Within the alternative community, there's already small companies popping up that are using those technologies, like bioacoustic technologies for enhancing various processes within the body. I'm not a biologist and scientist, so I can't describe all this properly, but it's already coming up through the alternative community. And like you just mentioned, like there's already a shift into more natural food, more natural medicines, things like that. And that's what I mean. That was part of the plan. And from my perspective, that's not even really a bad plan because it's a very much improved system over what we've been going through for all of these years leading up to it. And yeah, you could look at that. Maybe the part that goes on in our mind is hearing that was planned makes it inherently bad. But I think that's part of our ideology that might need to change. I was actually having this conversation with another friend the other day that if you really, I did a whole podcast about this years ago. There is a lot of good things that come out of the structure that I grew up in, what we call the Illuminati. And a lot of these changes that are coming from humanity that they created and may have done a lot of really dark and fucked up things, sorry for my language again, to get there, are going to be very beneficial to us moving forward. And that's like you asked earlier about the hope that I have. I don't really see all of this happening as a bad thing in the end. I see it as necessary, which is, this is the Stalinist part of it again, but I see it as necessary. And, whether it's controlled and planned doesn't make it bad. And yeah, the organic response, as Joel pointed out, is expected. Because
so you think that if mainstream media still exists in some capacity, that there will be someone like a quote unquote Anderson Cooper or whoever that's like them in 5, 10, 15 years or now is going to come on and be like, we have an announcement. Everything we thought we knew about vaccines was incorrect and blah, blah, blah. Or
it's more of a slow crumble.
I know it is a slow thing, but I'm just so curious to see, because listen, the reality is in 2019, we could have never thought that the conversation about vaccines that we're having today would be happening.
Or the covid.gov site that's up right now, right?
Yeah.
Like that's doing exactly what you're asking about. That's telling the public they were wrong about something.
Right? Whether or not what they're saying is actually true or just like a half truth, that's another conversation. But yeah, I get it. It's still coming out. It's still more in the mainstream. Like, hey, everything that we were told was wrong. And so what does that do to the individual psyche? How does that erode trust?
I don't think they have as much power as what we're speaking into. I don't think they're controlling the pathway as much as we're speaking into. Like, I don't think that all of 2020 was an intentional thought by some power behind the scene that this was going to be the thing that dismantles vaccines. Like, I genuinely believe that it's human integrity that woke up to that reality. And, the evolution of human consciousness shifts. And then they just kind of shift as a result of wherever we kind of steered and headed.
I agree with that.
As opposed to them literally hurting our consciousness in a certain direction. Like, some of the things that we're speaking into, there's no way where it's like, oh yeah, all of this is going to be so we can destroy mainstream media, CNN, and vaccinology. Like, that's some kind of crazy.
I don't think
mental
COVID.
gymnastics.
That's not. I don't think that's what we're saying. I don't think that's what COVID was about. I'm having a different conversation in that regards. But yeah, I get what you're saying, but it makes more sense that you have like a general long-term plan, and then there are things that occur, and everything's a testing ground.
Yeah, like if you wanted to,
just as you go.
Do that, like let's just say they've decided that they wanted to make everyone more healthy. There's a bunch of things that they need to do in order to achieve that. They can't just do that overnight.
But have they decided that they want to make everyone more healthy, or have people woken the fuck up to some ridiculous shit that's been going on for a long period of time, and we've decided we want to be more healthy, and then maybe they try to control how that health progresses in certain directions. I reject that they wanted to make us more healthy. That's not what took place. That's not what was taking place. That's not where we were going.
I mean, from your perception of the other side, that makes I would agree with you. But mine comes from the inside, where I was raised on them talking about this the entire time. So I have a different perspective on it, which is that they anticipate.
Like you Shane Bales, have visceral memory of a conversation taking place where, hey, Shane, down the road, we want to make humans more healthy, but in the meantime, we need to really fuck them up right now.
Well, I mean, in order to create the technology, they had to do a lot of damage. And then once that damage was done, a lot of people were in positions where they were a little bit too connected to that. And I mean, you're being very reductionist in this conversation, even by saying someone said it directly to me. You think that someone just sat me down and had
well, tell us then how you came across in your history.
But I've heard these conversations for my entire life in various settings, in various contexts.
Okay, sure. That's good enough for me.
This type of technology, everything that they were experimenting with in the programs was all to make humanity better. was to help us get to a point where we could increase our technology, increase our civilization, save nature in the process, because we were doing a lot of damage and they were very aware of that. But, sometimes in order to create, you have to destroy, and that's just a reality. And once they hit a point where there was a point of no return, they even had to wake up to that. And that was before you ever woke up to any of this stuff, that they came to that conclusion.
There was a conversation then it went on like decades ago that there was going to be someone that was called Shane that was going to leave the Illuminati, that was going to get on a podcast called Here for the Truth, and that Joel was going to speak exactly how you're speaking right now, dude. It was all planned, bro.
Exactly. It needs to be controlled that well, or else it can't be possibly true, is exactly why, they get away with it.
I tend to agree with both of you in certain ways,
and so do I. Like, I understand exactly where Joel's
coming
from, but it's
like
really
interesting.
That's like for the whole scheme of things.
When the whole 2020 thing, like it just looked like a fucking failed experiment. It looked like they had intent in a certain direction very clearly, and it was rejected,
Experiment.
Sorry?
To see if mRNA technology would work and therefore repurpose it for cancer medication, because they did that, which is what I said in 2018 before COVID even happened. They were going to do at some point. They've done that.
Yeah, but we don't know it's going to work out.
It was a very big success. COVID itself could have been anything, right? Like, that's the accident. Problem, reaction, solution is how they control things. It doesn't mean they have to create the problem. They can simply react to the problem, which is what they did in 2020.
So you think COVID happened on their terms and on their timing?
No.
Because to me, it doesn't seem that way.
No, that's not what I said at all. But they used it as an opportunity to test the technology in the lollipops, as I call them, in the vaccines, RNA technology, because they had a good excuse. And they knew that they could use that really good excuse to get a bunch of people on board. And they did. And proof is in the result. That was a successful experimentation. They got what they wanted out of it. And so much so that they can now let Trump put whatever he wants on a White House website.
But did they get what they want out of it if more people than ever are going to reject vaccines, period?
Because there's a whole new way of doing things medically that doesn't require vaccines anyways. That's the point. If you can go straight to a cell to change any problem in the human body, you don't need vaccines. You don't need any type of prophylactic. You barely need antibiotics.
It doesn't mean that's going to make people healthier, because it's still technology that
just
you have to experiment with.
A different pathway to technology, right?
Yeah.
The outcome's still the same, but a different pathway. And that's where the success came in, is because they got it. It was in the media for years leading up to 2020 that they were looking for a way to test that technology on a big enough scale. What did they get with the COVID accidental leak? They got an opportunity to test that technology on a big enough scale.
Lollipops for all.
It was a success. They know it works. And it's already being repurposed by all sorts of corporations right now because it worked. That's just proof in the result. It's not my opinion.
I mean, in that regard of, with that singular branch of COVID, yes, I can see that.
And that's what I mean by being reductionist about it, because you're trying to make it look like they created COVID to do this, to do that, but that's not the way that they work. They got a bunch of balls in the air at any given time, and they let us do our things. I've been saying that this whole podcast. They've made us the media. They let us do it, and they react to what we do along the way.
Because the reality is that a strong arguments can be made that COVID was forced and rushed to throw a spanner in the works for Trump.
Sure, but that would be a separate topic from the vaccinations as well, right? That's what I mean.
Totally,
You're trying to reduce them into one thing, and you can't do that. They're separate.
Okay.
COVID is one thing. The vaccinations are another thing.
Yeah. Right? Well, you passed his first test, Shane.
But that's what I mean. Like, we can't just look at everything as it's one thing. It's not. It's a lot of different things all happening at the same time. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Name of a popular movie.
What an interesting time to be alive.
And it's fun. I think it's a blast.
I do too.
You mentioned before, like, Earth going through electromagnetic shifts and changes. Can you speak more into that? And, like, Does this tie in astrologically in any way in terms of some major astrological shifts that we've seen recently?
Yeah, that's we have different ways of tracking these things. Nowadays, we have the scientific ability to actually look at the movement of the poles, right? And we used to use astrology to keep on terms with these cycles. And so, yeah, I mean, anyone who's into astrology knows that that's right what we're in the middle of, and we're in I call it like an evolutionary period, more or less. And yeah, I mean, even when I'm talking about with them, they understand that we're going through this, and that change is going to be positive because nature is going to make that change positive. They're trying as hard as they can to control it in such a way that they were going to keep themselves in power. But, ultimately, I don't believe that they'll ever be able to really do that, which is where, going back to your earlier question, why I see hope despite all of this. Because I see it as changes that we might not like in some facets, and we could put a lot of fear behind, like, who's controlling it and why they're doing it and all of that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that the way we've been doing things for the last 200 years has not worked. We need to start doing things differently. And that's, kind of where we're at right now, and especially with technology and medicine and food.
I can hear a bunch of flat earth dogmatists screeching as you said the word poles rather than pole just now. Is there anything you'd like to say about that?
Not really, other than the Earth's not flat, but but yeah, I mean, like that was something that was prophesized in a variety of different ways, and is like quite literally happening right now, where the poles are moving, and they're moving pretty dramatically and in a way that we weren't predicting that they would. People were kind of predicting like a full flip, but that's not what's happening. They're kind of doing this weird thing, and that's affecting us on every level. That's affecting our biology. And a lot of the new technology that they have, especially when it comes into gene and DNA editing directly, which is what they tested, is going to be the way that they help deal with this. Long before turbo cancers was a catchphrase, I was calling them rapid mutations, and had YouTube taking podcasts down because I said that when this change started, that people would start experiencing what is now called turbo cancer. And of course, we won't all say that that's because of the vaccine, but my cat died of it. So I don't think that's what it's because of, right? And this is a result of the electromagnetic changes going on the planet, what that does to our DNA. And we do need a way to start, correcting course on a lot of this stuff.
But why is that impacting certain people and not others? Like in cancer, like why isn't everyone getting
the same way, same reason everyone didn't get cancer in the first place, right? It's a combination, it's a breakdown between each cells. We're all very different. And we can't boil everything down to just one thing. We're not all exactly the same thing, and nothing happens in isolation.
Well, we also can't just attribute it to material, and there's so much that's happening on a psycho-emotional level that impacts how our body adapts, etc. So
which is also affected by the electromagnetic change, because our brain works on electromagnetics, right? So
very interesting.
That's what I mean. It's not even just one thing. It's not even just our DNA. It's our psyche. It's our emotional regulation, our nervous system, which is why, going back to earlier in the conversation, what's important to focus on is all of those things, because not just from the outside with media cycle and all of that are we getting this. Nature is giving this to us as well. And we do need to adapt to that. And like you said, like, it's why is it not everybody? Because not all of us react the same way to anything. Mm-hmm. And you get to make choices. And there are physical choices you can make to combat these things. There are immunities you can build to, like, Wi-Fi signals, as an example, or radiation, right? There are ways to build up resistances to poisons. There are a bunch of different things our bodies can learn how to do. And so trying to put everything into one box like that doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, from a grander scale, I just feel like the more people live in a not fear state, they're going to be healthier than if they live in a fear state. Absolutely. Even like, they're spraying us, Wi-Fi signals, as opposed to technology is advancing. This is what's happening. I'm not going to move in the middle of nowhere and live in a copper tent. Like, I'm fine. I'm resilient. I take care of myself. I don't need to spend all this mental energy freaking out about what they are doing to us and how we're getting poisoned. I can do the best I can. I can eat healthy foods. I can build healthy relationships. I can be on purpose. I can drink some healthy water. I can spend time in nature, etc. And then that's it. Like, exactly. There's only so much within my control.
And that's exactly the point of all of it, is it doesn't really matter what they're doing. We still have choices to make along the way. And if we are going to try and reduce it just down to hope or fear, then it's not going to allow us to do that in a lot of cases. If I were to, pick one ideology over the other, the idea that they're not controlling any of this and this is all just happening organically was the one that I would prefer people choose. Right. So, because that's going to put you in a state where you're actually living in accordance with that, which is a lot better than living in accordance with we're doomed because they've planned all of these things and they've been orchestrating all of these things. But again, the ideology that,
this is the thing. Like,
Tell us,
at
John.
the roots of any potential conspiracy, it would have to be, right, for the human to have a negative sense of him or herself, for the human to feel disempowered, for the human to believe that he or she is a scum on the earth as opposed to a wonder of nature. So, like, the way that I always tend to view these things, call it reductionistic, whatever, it's like, is it pro-human? Is it pro-humanity or is it like anti-humanity? Is it an idea that makes me at war with myself and with my existence, or something that empowers me to feel the wonder and the awe and all that comes with it being human, having thoughts, having interest, having passions, having curiosity, like looking at things through that optimistic lens, So like, beyond that, I really give less of a fuck these days about conspiracy period. It's like, does it empower you or does it disempower you?
Good, because that's the way it should have always been, right? And it's like, if we had started with that, then we would be fine right now, but we didn't. And again, like, that's not reductive. What you just said is not reductionist at all. Right? But I agree with you 100%. That's what I try to do through what I do on Patreon. I call it talking conspiracy theorists down off cliffs, because we have all of this stuff within what we repeat about our souls are being trapped and we're doomed and they're hitting us this way. It's all, negative, and it's all fear-based, and it's all anti-human.
To me, that's the thing that you should fear. You should fear anti-human sentiments.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think that part of maybe what's a misunderstanding about what we call the Illuminati is that they are anti-human. Maybe that's just the fundamental mistake that you asked me about earlier.
Okay, sure. So like, how does the Illuminati differentiate from collectivism, which I would say is a very anti-human sentiment?
Well, it depends on how do they differ? I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe.
Okay, well, to me, the biggest plague on humanity are these ideas of, collectivism, communism, socialism, number of different words, whatever. They all feed this anti-human sentiment that we're not worthy of being autonomous, sovereign individuals that get to think for ourselves, reap the fruits of our own effort, be productive, grow, innovate, etc. So like, how does the Illuminati differentiate from like general collectivists in that sense that want to spread these ideas that, we just need to like hold hands, sing kumbaya, eat as little as possible, give as much as possible?
I don't think that they do. I think that they created that.
Okay.
First place.
But so then that would make them anti-human then, right?
Well, I mean, in that sense, yes. But like I said, their plans are longer than our lifespans, right? So if they're looking at like humans 100 years from now, then yeah, sometimes it might appear anti-human right now, but if they have a goal that is going to open it up so that we can be a lot different, then maybe not, right?
Yeah, but it's always anti-human. The moment that you step into a position where I need to control for a certain outcome and step into the belief that the best outcome is served by control rather than freedom, it's anti-human.
I suppose. It's yeah. I mean,
stop defending the Illuminati, Shane. Shit, bro.
I mean, I'm not. I'm just speaking more to human nature and the way that we train. We learn things, but I mean,
the way that we trade humans.
Well, what do we do, right? Like we don't like words like that, but that's 100% what we're doing is training our minds. We're training ourselves, right? So that's the kind of stuff I was calling reductionist.
Yeah.
But yeah, because we are programmed. We're hackable. beings. And the choice is, do we program ourselves? Do we train ourselves? Or do we allow the collective to do that? Do we allow the society to do that? Do we allow God or whatever our God is to do that? Or do we choose to do that ourselves? That's really it. But humans are what humans are. And that's a programmable, trainable thing. It needs training, right? If we just left ourselves to our own devices.
Is it though? Because so often I hear these analogies, like humans are pigeons, or like the Skinner box experiments can be applied to humans. Like we're not pigeons. We're not rats. We're not in that regard. Sure, we can be indoctrinated in certain capacities.
Human going into nature becoming feral. That's never happened. Right? Like, again, without some type of structure, without some type of training, humans do resort to being feral. And we see, like, there's massive proof in the result for that. So that's part of our nature, right? And that requires some form of teaching, some form of training. You have kids. You have to know this. You can't just let them run around, do whatever they want all of the time. You have to teach them things. You have to teach them.
But reality is also a teacher, right? And within all of nature has a single objective. What is that objective?
To grow.
To grow. And so humans aren't any different. And humans are where they are today because of that objective, to survive and to grow. And so we've seen the human mind time and time again meet nature, which isn't all perfectly benevolent. Nature does have malevolent qualities, obviously, and find ways to grow, right? To survive, to thrive, to be better, to produce more, to generate more knowledge, to generate more wealth, to generate more prosperity. So I don't completely align with the idea that a human left to their own devices is just going to become a wild animal.
You're saying a child that doesn't have a parent is gonna survive?
No, I'm not saying that either. No, I'm not saying that.
So there's an element of training that just exists just with that.
Yeah, but and that training is built upon what? Humans started somewhere, someplace. It's built upon human consciousness, ingenuity itself. It's not built upon nothingness. Humans generated the structures of society, the rules of society, the general ways in which we speak to each other, communicate, build relationships. All that was done by humans. So everything that's built upon the child these days, it was humans being left to their own devices. Ultimately, is built upon that, right? It's not built upon anything else.
I think what it all just comes down to is we need a different system for humans to exist in. Right? Is basically it. Is the way that we do nurture children, the way that we do train humans these days is not in a way that's ultimately healthy for the human soul. Let's put it that way, to experience being human. But either way, like, I don't think that, just taking all of that away works either, because we have many, many examples of what happens that way. And what you're talking about in terms of like the growth, that only comes once survival's met, right? Like the primary focus is survival. In today's society, that's not the issue.
And that's not the issue because of humans.
Growing and building things, but it has to be like and nothing happens in isolation, man. Like, this has been a thousands of years process.
Yeah, that's right.
It's happened overnight.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure.
I'm just sorry. I'm just driving home the point that, like, humans trained themselves. Humans met reality. Humans met nature. Humans built things. Like, human ingenuity led to everything. Like, it wasn't everything that you see now in terms of civilization. It wasn't humans being hacked and trained to go and do these certain things. It was a process of trial and error. It was a process of conjecture and criticism. Does this work? Does this not work? Let's iterate. Let's adjust. I'm just throwing a...
They did. Once something worked, what did they do? They trained people to do that thing that worked. Yeah, but I don't understand what you're even arguing here.
I'm arguing the point that, like, humans are just like hackable in a sense, so to speak, or just pigeons, or just sheep, or just rats. Like, ultimately, everything we witness today was done by humans. Is what I'm saying at. Whether I'm arguing a moot point which you haven't made, I don't have complete clarity on. But that's my argument: is that everything we've witnessed today is done by humanity, was built by humanity, was built by human consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe you're arguing a mute point I'm not understanding, because I don't really understand what you're arguing here, or even what you're trying to say, other than, something I've said a bunch of different times throughout this podcast. Like, humans aren't inherently bad. We do require a system in order to exist within, just to be able to coexist with each other. That usually came through like morality. But even that was something that you said, we developed through trial and error. But once we figured out where the error was, we trained people not to recommit the error. And once we figured out what worked, we trained people to do what worked. So that training still existed within that structure. And that's the part of us that we need. I just ultimately we just need a different system for that, because the one that we have right now is very anti-human.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Makes sense, man. Makes sense.
Yeah, we would then have to have a conversation on who was the first human, what is evolution, how did we evolve, were we programmed to have some type of knowledge, what is consciousness, what separates us from, let's say, an ape, how did that process happen, did it happen through some natural process, was there some type of genetic manipulation that some people talk about? So it's yeah.
And even the way that things have happened, it didn't just everywhere all at once, like a new technology popped up. It started being different areas of the planet have started doing different things based on their own interaction with their reality. And we've just grown to a place where that's all globalized now, and we forgot that process existed even. And we're looking to put everything into a one category, in a one box, because the internet has trained us to believe that that's possible, but it's not.
I hear you, bro.
What is the Illuminati recruitment process like today?
We agree, right? Because I believe in humanity, and I believe that we're a lot better. I believe that we do deserve to have that freedom. I believe that we would figure out all these problems. I don't believe we need these parents dangling over our heads telling us what the right way is to go all of the time. And I think that this version of humans, where we are right now in society, has unfortunately been subjected to that group of parents putting the systems of control you talked about, communism, socialism, all of those things in front of us like a dangling carrot, and then incentivized us to follow them, and the majority of the herd who did so, right? And that's everything, as far as I know it, that's everything you guys are trying to rail against, right? So it must exist if you're railing against it.
I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Me too. Listeners, if it sounds like
I am. I love the passion too. I love the passion.
And I apologize to anyone involved if anyone thinks that I'm getting upset with Joel, or Joel, I don't know, maybe Joel's getting upset with me, but I'm not. I'm not, man, and I think this is fun, and
I'm not getting upset with you, bro.
We disagree.
I'm hosting a podcast and sharing my opinions, which is what I'm meant to do. That's it.
And we agree a lot more than we disagree on anything as well. There might be some little parts of it that we disagree on, and that's cool.
But listen, Joel's hoping to be asked to be part of Trump's cabinet. So this is why, he's taking the stance he is, because he knows that Trump is the truth. Okay.
I see you're just really into the Trump camp. I didn't expect that.
I'm not really into the Trump camp.
I was kidding.
I'm observing objective reality and measuring it against some things that I'm hearing and seeing as well. And it's all interesting, man. It's all very fucking interesting. That's for sure.
Cash Patel is looking for an admin, and Joel's ready to throw in his.
Apparently, he's only taking on brown hires. So,
when you are 100%
close enough, dude. Close enough.
Organic.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Their plans aside, our response to them have been organic, and we both agree on that. And I think that our organic response, because humans know better, is what's different. I used to argue with them that this would never work because we are too smart for this. And what you're pointing to is that there was an aspect that I was correct. We are, we didn't just blindly accept everything that they tried to shove down our throat. And we are at the place where they have had to readjust to the fact that we didn't. And all of that we agree on. Whether or not that changes things in the long haul, I don't think we would agree on, because I don't think that we both have the same view of where that ends. I think that your view of that might be a little bit more negative than mine is. And mine does require us having these organic responses that you're pointing out. So ultimately, even the disagreement we are having is kind of mute, because either way, we're moving towards somewhere that's better, in my opinion.
Yeah. Hey, Shane, do you know how we can get Ye on the podcast? And
Yeah.
what are your thoughts of him as a whatever what he is?
Bro, he's jumped
in
the
the world?
shark now, bro, fully. But
Yeah.
go.
Well, my joke on Fear and Hopium is that I've been actually occupying his clone for the last
Amazing.
while, and I've been the one doing all his public appearances to make him act like that. Because that's the level of control the Illuminati really has, guys. Um, but yeah, I mean, I see a lot of mind control that just broke, and you got a guy who's already too big to just completely silence without killing him, which you're not going to do with a person like that either, right? So you just let them run their mouth, and it's one of those things where it's very much like the alternative community as a whole. To someone outside, it sounds very crazy, but if you are kind of aware of a lot of different mechanisms of the world, it doesn't sound as crazy. But it's coupled with a lot of very crazy behavior. So yeah, that's.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's definitely entertaining.
I mean, what is your take on the rise of the Jewish conspiracy, Jews being the top of the umbrella, everything just falling back to the Jews? Because this definitely seems the way that the quote unquote, again, I don't like the term, but people are using it, woke right or whatever it seems to be heading towards.
Well, I've always seen this as the fact that the Illuminati exists and people don't have a name for it. So they're always trying to blame it on a group. And the one that makes the most sense as an Illuminati type of structure does tend to be that one for most people. So that's where it all falls back on. Obviously, there's a lot of theories as to why. One that I've always kind of had in my mind is they were the original debt collectors. So there's like a part of people that just developed a hatred because of that. It just snowballed into other things over the years as well. But I think ultimately why it happens is we're kind of in a warish time, the way that they're posturing in the Middle East there. And that usually rises whenever we're in a warish time. So there's that. And then also just with everything else that's going on in society, with all of the different structures crumbling and being shaken up the way that they are, Trump and what his administration is all doing, it's making people look for the deep state. It's making people look for the Illuminati, and they're trying to blame it on a one group.
People are always looking for a scapegoat, man. Like they're always looking for a scapegoat to simplify, to not live in uncertainty and embrace the mystery of not knowing. It's human nature.
That's why it's that human nature to try and bring everything down into like one basket for us, right? Is to try and make sense of it. It's too difficult for us to make sense of all the moving parts. It's like we understand a clock or a watch from the outside, but if we looked at the inside, we'd be really confused as to what we were looking at.
What is the most mind-blowing, wild thing that you had witnessed inside your time with these organizations?
Yeah, and not the deep bunker like when you were 4 years old, where some dude had an iPad that didn't exist for 25 years. Something else.
Something other than that. I mean, there's been lots of them, so it's really a pick your flavor. But I mean, I've seen, retrieved UFOs. I've seen creatures that aren't supposed to exist that are held in captivity. I've seen humans be able to do things that humans aren't supposed to be able to do. Yeah, all sorts of different stuff, really.
On that note, seeing humans do what they're not supposed to do, the telepathy tapes. Have you heard of it? It's gotten really popular. I listened to it.
But I've heard of them. A lot of people have been asking me about them.
Yeah, I'm curious if you do get a chance to, listen to them. We can have a conversation offline. But just like it's pretty fascinating to see these children that supposedly, are nonverbal, and they would be called, let's say, autistic on the spectrum. Some people might say they're quote unquote vaccine injured. Who knows to what degree that's even true? And yet they don't really have the motor skills that we have, and yet they have these abilities that are pretty hard to deny based on the filming and the things that have been documented. So like, how does that play into like the things that you experienced growing up, and just like the innate potential and power of humans?
Well, that's what they've been trying to duplicate or mimic, as I say, with technology, is all of our natural technology, if you want to call it that, what people tend to think of as magical abilities. Our ability to change even the structure of our own body. We've documented it in isolated cases. We know that these different potentials exist, but what the programs were was trying to gather enough evidence of it and test it well enough that they could create technologies that mimicked it. And this is where any level of control is maintained, is because if we don't figure out that we can do a lot of these things on our own, and that the human capacity is greater than we're taught that it is, then we're going to turn to the technology, because the technology is going to be able to give us all of those abilities. Much like the fact that on some level, like, you guys are close, you communicate telepathically with each other all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, if you didn't have the internet to come together and talk, you would probably be more aware of the fact that you were talking to each other telepathically, right? Like, if it was 1,000 years ago or something crazy like that, you would become more aware of it because you wouldn't have the technology to blur that. And so that's a lot of what the agenda behind a lot of the programs was to learn our human technology, the miracles, the magic that we are able to produce as individuals, and mimic that with technology so that we would forget that, or disbelieve that we were capable of those things too. So what we should be at, without any of that, would be something like the telepathy tapes coming along, which is some documented evidence that we have this ability. And then that should be something that inspires us to look into it more and develop it further, and so on. But if we have, the internet and Zoom to replace it, we're going to be a lot less likely to try and develop that skill. So yeah, that's part of what I've been talking about since I wrote the blog as well and started doing interviews, was that's what the programs were for. They were trying to figure out what we could do, right? Just like a lot of the CIA just declassified files that we've seen with MK Ultra and remote viewing and things like that the CIA was testing. The programs were just a deeper level of the same thing, and they found out a lot more than they're telling the public about. And turning that into technology so that we don't ask those questions or discover those abilities on our own, hopefully. I believe the opposite to be true. I think that what the technology is going to do is free up enough leisure in us, a lot more, a lot of things are going to be automated, done for us. Scarcity will go away, things like that. I believe that's going to open up the human potential to actually rediscover those things personally. But time will tell on that.
Yeah.
There was a recent
Yeah,
White
it is
House.
interesting.
Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say real quickly, it is interesting, even just that a podcast like that would become so popular when, like, 20 years ago, people would be like, okay, yeah, that's weird. So I think, like, the human mind, from an individual standpoint and a collective, we're ready for more of these ideas. We're more open to it. There is more fascination. And maybe some people are having these types of experiences, which is true. I mean, I've talked about this, online with Joel. I've dreamed about someone and woken up to, like, an email from them. Joel and I finish each other's sentences all the time. We text each other the same exact thing at the same time. This happens on a regular basis. So it's fascinating.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it all.
There was a recent White House press release in which there was a comment that includes, our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated, cause things to grow, and improve productivity. What's happening here?
Well, I mean, it can be taken hyper literally or just literally. I think that when people hear that, they're thinking of some kind of crazy advanced UFO technology, right? But eliminating time and space. So some of the technologies
manipulate time and space.
Yeah. So if you just separate them, like manipulate time and space in the sense of, like, we can get you from New York to California in 45 minutes. That's manipulating time and space, right? They have a lot of new technologies that are like that will manipulate time and space. So I don't read as deep into it as a lot of people do, but I also know that they're not lying at the same time.
Cool.
I think a lot of the technology that we're going to see is going to appear like magic to a lot of people. And that's where the path of discoveries comes in, because it'll seem like we just discovered all of this stuff. But like I've pointed out, like I've been witnessing the development of all of this stuff since I was a little kid, and none of this stuff was in the public's eyes. So they're a lot further ahead than we think that they are. And the way that they're going to release it to the public is going to appear to us like it just kind of came out of nowhere. And that'll be how they bury all of the fact that they had to run these programs in the first place and violate the rights of a lot of different humans in the process, because we won't ask the questions of where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
What do you? This is kind of on the same topic, but not like, is it just coincidence? That book from, like, the 1800s. Have you come across it that talks about, like, Baron Trump and Trump.
Oh, you're
as,
so
like,
obsessed with Trump, bro. Oh my God, this guy can't stop talking about
he's
Trump.
your boy, bro.
Jesus, bro. Get over it, dude. What the?
Dude, listen, Joel, show everyone your MAGA tattoo, bro. Show everyone the MAGA tattoo that you got on your right butt cheek. Come on, we're ready for it.
No, bro. Ask your fourth Trump question for the bug. Yeah.
Well, because no, it's like these are peculiar things that are interesting, and like Shane's someone that I like to broach these subjects with. You know?
I like the question. I like the question. I was giving you shit.
No, like human consciousness is a lot more powerful than we've been led to believe, right? We are a lot more They sell us stuff like collectivism and things like that because it, once again, perverts or inverts the way that we are connected kind of psychically or telepathically and things like that, because, you know, it takes away the fact that we're still sovereign within that structure. Anyways, yeah, I mean, this is going to be part of everything that comes moving forward. We're going to learn a lot more about ourselves in the process and things like that. That's, you know, going back to what Joel said about the organic response. It's time for us to have this organic response to all of this. It's been, you know.
Yeah, because in the book, it prophesizes that this Trump is the last president, et cetera, et cetera. And what's interesting, Trump just is selling Trump 2028 hats now. Like,
yeah, I mean,
it's just funny. Like I haven't read the books, but like
I haven't read them either.
There's a young aristocrat named Baron Trump. He lives in Castle Trump, you know, and he's got a mentor named Don. Like, so trippy.
Yeah, very, very interesting for sure. But yeah, I mean, we all have the ability to see into the future as well. And I'm sure that people have written books because of things that they've viewed into the future. I think the only difference is that a lot of the time our future, what we see is a potential as opposed to a set in stone. That's absolutely what's going to happen. And then a lot of the time things get really darn close when they do end up happening. And
I kind of sense that Project Looking Glass has legs. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, that's it. Like I said, they have it. The difference, or I guess because a lot of the whistleblowers who came out, like they were isolated to a project, never really understood that like they were happening all over the place and they were all coming back with different outcomes. It wasn't like every time they looked at the future, it was exactly the same. It was different every time. There were variables every time. And so they learned through all of that, you know, although it can help and, you know, they can kind of anticipate some things, it's not going to be exact. And so they kind of coupled that type of technology with cultural control to try and cause those things to happen. So, yeah, going back to me understanding that Donald Trump would be a president before Donald Trump even understood that Donald Trump would be a president. And then put in context with your question about that book, you know, put your fingers together. I actually just rewatched Mr. Robot. And did you guys know that they predicted Donald Trump being president and also not being in for a second term and then coming back with a vengeance in a third term? Because they also had people wearing face masks all through the series for whatever reason, which we didn't see until 2020. And that series ended in 2019. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a few premonition dreams and I'm like, you know, you're New Jersey Greek dude, you know, with no special powers or raised in the Illuminati. So I can only imagine like what people are capable of and what inner technology they have access to. And even just the stuff with like, you know, kids learning how to read blindfolded, you know, like they're blindfolded and they can see and they can read. It's like fascinating. I've seen it in person multiple times.
Control to our thought processes, which Joel has hinted at a couple times, is like all of this stuff that kind of teaches us that it's, you know, I'm special because I was selected for the Illuminati and that makes me better than other people, or I have these gifts. None of that's true, right? It's like if you were nurtured that way, you would understand those gifts just the same way that you learn the ABCs, right? Like all humans have these potentials. It's just whether or not we're taught, whether or not it's nurtured in us. And we've all grown up in a society where it's been occulted. So,
yeah.
We need to be trained, Joel.
Trying to be trained. They need to be hacked.
Programmed.
Before you mentioned, when I asked you what some of the wild things you've seen, you just mentioned retrieved UFO. Are you talking about craft or biology, body?
Well, both, technically, but yeah, mostly just craft. There's been things, most of it's very old, which is a lot of what the occult kind of is kind of keeping things from the public eye that would make us understand that humans go back a lot further than we do. That's starting to kind of come forward a little bit because of people like Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson getting some, notoriety, I guess, or getting platformed a lot more, and that making its way through the consciousness, which is a good thing. But even that's only about half of the story that they are aware of and letting us play with the concepts of. So.
Hey, Shane, from an occultist standpoint, what movies do you recommend are like the most accurate disclosure movies around some of these subjects?
It depends on which one of the subjects. Like something like Adjustment Bureau is a good one. A little bit more fictional version of the same kind of concept would be Dark City, okay. Which is like, taking it into an extreme, like we're running on a loop type thing. But there's that.
How about from an alien standpoint or like a UFO standpoint?
Well, he's going to mention the worst movie of all time, Jupiter Rising.
Well, actually, not really.
Okay.
But that could be one of them. But there's a lot of just kind of our fictional lore built into that one that I would disagree with. Actually, I think one of the better ones would be the Zack Snyder's Justice League, like his more recent one, when they're doing there's a really poorly Gal Gadot's dialogue is just horribly recorded, but when she's kind of giving the explanation of what happened in their past, that's a lot closer to our past than anything I've seen in a long time as well. But I don't like talking about that stuff just because it's not really all of that relevant to us anymore. It's very fun. It's very interesting. And, it's at one point in time, but most of my public speaking, I try to focus on what's clear and present for us now instead of just getting into the big sexy stories for people. Not that that's what you're asking me to do, just in general.
Yeah, no, it's just, I'm just curious.
Who would make a more fertile recruit for the Illuminati, Erasmus or I?
For the Illuminati?
We know the answer, bro.
I don't know. I mean, you both for different reasons, but I think I'd pick Joel at the end of the day.
Ooh, damn. What department would I be recruited for?
What are the reasons? Yeah, I'd love to know.
An outwardly focused passion. Not that you don't have that, but his is always very much on the surface. And that in and of itself is a very useful trait for people who like to influence and control other people.
Well, he definitely likes to influence and control other people. We can't say that's a great quality, but it might work for the Illuminati project and cult. What specific cult or project would you think he'd be ideal for?
By the way, people, this is not disclosure.
I don't know if I should answer that. No, I'm kidding.
Tell us offline. You can tell us offline, and then people could
probably one that like teaches a course on how to not follow a herd. I think
there you go.
Nice.
It's like I would be perfect to teach a magic class. But yeah, I don't know.
You don't have to answer that question.
It's all good, man. We're having some fun.
I need to ask you one more question, just because people are going to ask, how were you allowed, Shane, to have these conversations right here, right now with us?
There's a few rules that I have to follow, which are pretty easy to follow, but ultimately there's nothing I can say that you can really act on. So it's that. It's, I could help people understand the how and why of things, but ultimately, I mean, I can't prove anything to anyone, right?
So there's no one that has any interest in like silencing you?
Not really, no. I mean, I don't have, if I had a bigger audience, maybe.
I was about to say, if you were invited onto Rogan, there might be
if I played my cards differently, it would have been. But they warned me about that as soon as the blog kind of went viral in the first place, which is a big part of why I didn't. Understanding like where I could take a veer off of the road to not blow myself up beyond a certain point was.
So are we currently useful idiots for an Illuminati agenda?
Like here for the truth, like us
for the truth, yeah.
Not really,
here for the Illuminati, bro. We have to change our brand.
There's way too many out there to say that they need to control things that finely anymore, right? So
yeah.
Hey, Shane, everybody always plays that game as soon as someone gets popular.
That's probably the reason, why like our growth curve isn't the same trajectory as like a Rogan or something. It's because we keep inviting Shane on.
That's why.
Let's see what happens after this one. Hey, Shane, real quickly, I wanted to ask this earlier. The acronym SRA has gotten popular over the last several years, satanic ritual abuse. and you have lots of different people that come out and talking about it. Is it a real thing? Does it happen? Are some people just lying about it just to kind of jump on the trend? I'm just curious your thoughts.
Combination of both. I mean, it happens. It's a real thing. I think it's been overemphasized within the conspiracy community, kind of blown up into something it's not, like adrenochrome or a lot of other little topics like that that happen that we do that with. But in reality, there are satanic cults out there that abuse people, and ritualistic abuse is a common way. I was going to say a commonly used tactic in cults in general. So, I think that it's a combination of both. There are some people who are probably telling the truth, and there's some people who are probably just jumping on this story for whatever their personal gain from it is, because obviously we have a whole community that's based on people who do that. So it's always going to have that element to it.
Mm-hmm.
But whether or not there's a reality to it, yeah. And I think that the reason why something like that gets so highlighted is just to kind of, because of our desire to make everything just one thing, much like the way that they declassified MK Ultra and everyone believes that everything is MK Ultra, even though there was a bunch of subgroups of MK Ultra that never get discussed, just like there's a bunch of other cults that do ritualistic abuse that never get discussed. So
I'm going to shoot the subject if that's right. I've been reading a book called Dark Mission by Richard C. Hoagland, who is an investigator of much of the Mars and Moon rover photography, etc. And he claims in that book, like, us going to not, whether we went to the moon or not going to the moon is the wrong question. That's not the conspiracy at all. Like he claimed he was there in the, in the early 60s. He was part of the press, etc. He studied thousands of photos. He's saying conspiracy isn't that we didn't go to the moon. It's what we discovered on the moon. And through his research and through his analyzing of these photographs, he's found like huge, like glass monuments of weird materials, pastel colors, etc., etc. Just wondering if you have any commentary on that. In your view, whether we went to the moon or not, and also finding ET structures and artifacts on the moon.
How the best way to answer this? Well, first of all, I want to say that I stole a phrase from him because it's very fitting for what I grew up around, which is the lie is different at every level. That was something that was constantly revealed to me throughout my life. I believed things wholeheartedly, all to find out that was a lie and this was the truth. And then I believed that wholeheartedly, all to find out it's like Scientology is based on the same idea, right? So not until you get to an upper end of it do you actually get into the truth. So I wanted to say that about him. And then the rest of it, I believe that we have gone to the moon. I don't believe we've sent people there. I don't believe that the moon landing, as we put it forward, actually happened as we put it forward, but I believe that we've landed things on the moon. And the rest of what he's saying is the reason why we're so quick to cover all of that stuff up is because there are things on the moon that would tell us, and on Mars, that would point us, and on Earth, that would point us to the fact that Earth is a lot older than we think it is. Humanity is a lot older than we think it is. And human society has gone through various renditions, or Earth has been occupied through various renditions of society or civilization over time. I think that gets all the questions within your question.
Yeah, interesting take. I mean, some of the Mars photos, like the face on Mars, like that's so wild, like seeing something as clear as that.
And if you just saw, they just a totally different expedition just got pictures of what looks like a mimic of the Giza pyramids on Mars, and that's just off of where that face is.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's a whole city that he's kind of pointed to in that region as well. Cydonia, I think is what he called it, or something like that.
Yeah. And there's
sorry,
go ahead.
No. Do you think the Blue Origin Bezos flight, like with Katy Perry and all that, like that's all that stuff's legit? That went into space, like that. You know what I mean?
I didn't really look into it enough to know for sure. I mean, that is about as far into space as they ever really go. So, and they are trying to make that commercial for people. So I know they use the same something very similar to film movies sometimes as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if it were real with staged elements around it that make people think that the whole thing was made up. But I'll be honest and just say I haven't really looked into it because
that's cool.
Well, it just wasn't paying enough attention.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised either way. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I'm someone who has publicly said many times, I don't believe that we can just, get in a rocket ship and fly ourselves to Mars or fly ourselves to the moon the way that they sell it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. We'll wrap this up soon. I just want to ask you because, you've made a throwaway statement before and people are going to be curious. You said the Earth isn't flat. We've had conversations on both sides on the thing. We've read books on both sides as well also. So based on your perspective, what is the reason for, the flat Earth phenomena, I guess, from, a perspective of an ideology that seems to be growing in prominence?
Well, I think it has to do with our perceptions and our kind of like I call it like the coding error between what the Earth actually is and the way we perceive it. I believe that the way that our interface with whatever this reality works is meant to pattern everything into spheres just in general. And that's why we see everything when we look out as being exactly that shape. That's part of it. And then the reason why a lot of these other anomalies are occurring is because a lot of the data we have from NASA is just made up in a lie. And we're trying to compare it to that, but also because it matches the way that we perceive things. And I don't think we have a full grasp on what reality is in the way that we're perceiving it yet. So it's almost like, to simplify that a bit, it's like a video game. If you're playing a video game, it's always going to seem like the train is flat, right? Or because of the way that it's rendering itself for us as we move forward. And so I think in a lot of like the flat Earth tests, that's what's coming forward, is just the way that it's rendering it back to the people is making them think that it's flat when really there is, curve to that. But I also have a lot of disbelief of the model that we're given in terms of what the roundness is and all the spinning that's involved with it as well, which also kind of answers away a lot of the flat Earth points also, right? If you just change the way that gravity is happening and the way that we're perceiving distance, what our eyes do when it processes light, because just like with lenses, we can curve light, right? So that would make something that is actually curved appear flat to us at times. Anywho, yeah, it's a massive topic, but to try and sum it up into one thing, I believe it's just because of a computing error between the way we measure and the way we compute our reality and what the reality actually is.
Yeah. My question was more along the lines of, do you think there is like a malevolent intent to grow flat Earth ideology?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's one of those traps within our community, right? It's one of those things that, when 2020 happened and people started coming into the alternative community, they were inevitably going to have to find and sift through and deal with listening to that will make a lot of people throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of conspiracy theories in general. Flat Earth, Tartaria, there's a few different things we can point to, or what the QAnon movement even was, all have kind of done that, where it hasn't worked 100% to do this, but for a lot of people, it has really made them throw all conspiracy theories into a flat Earth basket.
So even with the Q thing, like and again, I haven't delved into this at all, but people talk about it. We've had conversations on it. Like there's certain things that are trippy as fuck in terms of the timeline and the accuracy. So is that just like what we were talking about before of like a book from the 1900s predicting the future, like where consciousness has this like,
again, this is where like the Project Looking Glass changes this, if that's a reality.
Yeah, I think I haven't looked into every point that has been made in terms of like they said that this would happen on this day. All of the ones that I have looked at are very vague. It's like Nostradamus's predictions.
Well, like for example, one of the only Kash Patel mentions in the Q drops happened to be the day Kash Patel got appointed just recently.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
There's definitely some weirdness there, but also I believe that like someone within some type of department has been running that for a long time anyway, so they're probably using AI to scour the internet and make stuff like that happen at this point. I think that there was a definite shift in the whole QAnon movement where that dynamic took place. I don't think, again, I think this is another case, and this is a lot of how, what we call the Illuminati worked. They didn't have to create the phenomenon. They just had to steer it once they knew it was there. And so someone creates QAnon, it has this huge response. And then they're like, oh, well, if they're going to pay attention to that, let's start inserting some things into it. And if they are going to do that, the only way to keep people playing the game is to put some truth into that, which would be maybe using, like what Joel said, maybe using some Project Looking Glass to throw some things in there that would potentially come true so that it helped, vet the rest of the information.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Shane, this is awesome. Outside of the fact that I'm going to be depressed for the next 2 weeks that I wasn't chosen for the Illuminati recruitment program. But I'm really grateful for you for coming on, man.
I said I would take you both. All right. you made me choose between the two of you. And
it's all good. I like my life, man. I'm not trying to get recruited.
He's a natural born performer, dude. I mean, that's
it is true.
The thing,
he's got, listen, if I was in your shoes, he's got certain abilities that I think would serve certain projects very well.
I mean, move over to John McDonald. We're going to replace you.
Hey, bro, I'm going to want to wrap this thing up. I keep saying that we will. I've got a massive question that I kind of want to ask you. What is, I guess, your perception or the Illuminati perception of like human consciousness even existing on Earth, like, period?
Well, I mean, I believe that every one of us is a soul. A soul being a container for energy being information, and that those containers for energy incarnate in various places and is currently incarnated here into a human body. And that's as...
Is it a choice we make, in your view?
I believe so, yeah. I don't subscribe to when people are talking about the soul recycling and all of that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that that's a reality. A technology like that existed, but I don't believe it was ever meant for us. But that's, again, a whole other podcast. But yeah, I mean, a lot of our belief in the Illuminati has to do with like soul contracts and all that kind of stuff, which again is diminishing our true power in all of this, which is why, that's the line you can find. If it makes you feel weak and powerless, you should probably throw it away because they know that the opposite is true. And that's exactly why they want to keep us feeling weak and powerless so that they can make the rules instead of us making the rules, so that they can train us instead of us training ourselves, so that they can program us instead of us programming ourselves. So any type of that ideology that pops up, I just recognize as their ideology. And maybe that's a good place to kind of leave the last statement is, to paraphrase, I think is a Carl Jung quote, things that annoy us about other people are things that we recognize within ourselves. And I get really annoyed when I see people spouting things that I know to be Illuminati ideology, because I've been fighting that ideology out of my own brain my entire life. And I know what it is. And unfortunately, a lot of the new age stuff is steeped in it. And a lot of people are parroting a lot of their ideologies, not recognizing that that's where they originate as well.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Yeah, dude, totally agree. Like, even just the idea that there is like a proverbial elitist they that is separate and better than you and can manipulate and control your life is, like, to me, something that's going to lead you down the wrong path, period. Like, you are the captain of your soul. You are the captain of your ship. You have volitional consciousness. You have the power to impact reality, to create, to grow, to innovate, to improve things all around you. Don't forget that.
100%. And that's why they don't want you to know that. So.
Can I get an amen?
Can I get an amen? His name.
Can I get an Trump? Is Donald H. Trump is the reincarnation of Jesus H. Christ.
Oh, damn.
Speak it, sir. Okay, bro. Anything you'd like to leave our audience with in terms of, how they can, I guess, follow you, get behind what you're doing?
Well, I have a newer podcast called Fear and Hopium, which I kind of talked about earlier. It's a comedy parody podcast where I play a whistleblower character that is just over the top. It's a comedy bit where I'm also sharing, going through different conspiracy topics, tying the truth into the bits, and then making fun of where we get it wrong. So check that out, because it's one of my favorite things to do. And if I can do more of it, that would be great.
Amazing.
Do you improv it, or is it just kind of you have a general outline?
Loosely written. So I write notes for it, and then I ad lib on all of those notes as I go through, and then edit it together.
Bro, imagine one of
If
your
you were improv, I was gonna ask you to improv like Joel and myself, like being agents of Illuminati, and I'd love to hear you talk about how Here for the Truth is here spreading propaganda. It would be funny. But anyways, Joel, you're about to say something.
Can definitely do that. I've done 2 interviews as Chanel now. So that's another thing. Is Chanel is available for interviews, and I will just go on and play the character during the interview and give you all of his answers instead of my own.
Bro, imagine one of your former Illuminati bosses watching you like improv act this stuff. They're just like, what the fuck happened to this guy?
He had so much potential. He was going to be the leader of this cult, and now he's wearing makeup and
I keep in touch with people that I've known from that world, and they are all just blown away by the fact that I do this at all. Like, even willing to, go on a podcast and talk about all this stuff, because it's, it'd be very easy for, I'm sure that the majority reaction to me is like, this guy's fucking crazy. So, it is what it is.
Nice, bro. All right, man. Thank you so much, bro. This was a fucking blast. We covered a lot. And yeah, everyone else, hope you got value from it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. And that wraps up today's journey. But hey, the truth train doesn't stop here. Every Friday, we drop little nuggets of wisdom straight to your inbox. We're talking mind-expanding ideas, heart-opening perspectives, and the kind of content that hopefully makes you go, whoa, I never thought of it that way. Our Friday drops like having coffee with that friend who always blows your mind. Except this friend shows up right on schedule and never asks to borrow money. So if you want to join our truth-seeking tribe, it's super easy. Just hop over to hereforthetruth.com/Friday and hit that subscribe button. No spam, no fluff, just pure unfiltered goodness delivered weekly. So if you're ready to make your Fridays a little more truthful, a little more inspiring, and a whole lot more awesome, your future self will thank you for this one. See you next time. And remember, we're always here for the truth, and we're always here for you.